After 30 years of never missing a shift, they fired me to steal my pension. Big mistake. Welcome to Revenge Galore. If you crave gripping stories, where justice hits hard and betrayal never goes unpunished, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join us for your daily dose of raw, emotional, and unforgettable justice. My name is Vincent Kowalczyk and I'm 61 years old. For 30 years, I've walked into the same factory building every morning at 6:45 a.m., rain or shine, holidays or family emergencies. Precision tool and manufacturing has been my second home since I was 31 years old, fresh out of a messy divorce and looking for stability. I found it on the shop floor working with my hands, building parts that kept industrial equipment running across 3 states. The termination meeting lasted exactly 8 minutes. I know because I've been timing everything for the past 30 years, production runs, break times, shift changes. When you work in manufacturing, timing is everything. I just never thought it would matter for my own career. Vincent, we're downsizing the machining department, said Regional Operations Manager Austin Thornfield, not looking up from his tablet. He was 36 years old, MBA from Duke, been with the company for 11 months. Your position is being eliminated as part of our operational streamlining initiative. I sat in the small conference room next to the shop floor, the same room where I'd attended safety meetings, trained new operators, and received my 25-year service award. The smell of cutting oil and metal shavings drifted through the thin walls, smells that had become as familiar as coffee brewing in my kitchen. When? I asked. End of shift today. We'll need your badge and locker cleaned out before you leave. 5 days. I was 5 days away from my 30-year anniversary with Precision Tool and Manufacturing, which would have triggered full pension vesting under the company's retirement plan. 5 days from the financial security I'd been working toward for 3 decades. I've got 30 years here, I said. Austin looked up for the first time during the meeting. According to our records, you have 29 years and 11 months. Close but not quite 30. I knew that wasn't right. I started at Precision Tool on March 1, 1994. Today was February 24, 2024. That was 29 years, 11 months, and 24 days. 6 more days and I would hit the 30-year mark that guaranteed full pension benefits. I'd like to see those records, I said. Vincent, I understand this is difficult, but the decision has been made. Human Resources has prepared your termination paperwork. Austin slid a manila folder across the table. Everything looked standard: termination letter, final pay calculation, COBRA information. But the service time calculation showed 29 years and 10 months. According to their math, I was a full month short of pension vesting. This calculation is wrong, I said. I started March 1, 1994. The system shows your effective start date as April 1, 1994, Austin replied. I'm sure it's accurate. But I knew it wasn't. I had my original offer letter at home, my first time card, my employee handbook from 1994. I'd kept everything because my grandfather had always told me to document my work life carefully. Paper doesn't lie, he used to say. But people do. I want to review this with HR, I said. Vincent, you're no longer an employee as of end of shift. Any questions about your paperwork should be directed through proper channels. Austin was already standing, already moving toward the door. I was a problem that had been solved, a line item that had been crossed off his optimization spreadsheet. I signed the termination papers with a pen I'd been using for 5 years, black ink, company logo starting to wear off. Then I walked back to my workstation for the last time. 30 years of accumulated life spread across one metal locker and a small toolbox. Photos of my kids when they were young, a coffee mug my daughter made in high school pottery class, safety awards, productivity certificates, the small radio I'd listened to during lunch breaks for the past decade. I packed everything into a cardboard box while my coworkers pretended not to watch. Some of these guys I'd trained when they were fresh out of trade school. Others I'd worked alongside for 20-plus years, shared overtime shifts and holiday coverage when their kids got sick or their wives needed help with family emergencies. Tommy Baranowski from the next station over walked up as I was clearing out my toolbox. Vince, what the hell is going on? They're downsizing the department, I said. My number came up. Tommy's face went dark. He was 57, had been with Precision Tool for 26 years. Are you okay? This is bullshit, man. Total bullshit. I looked around at the shop floor where I'd spent more waking hours than in my own home. The machines I'd operated, maintained, and trained others to use. The place where I'd built parts for oil rigs and construction equipment and power plants, components that were probably still running somewhere, keeping important systems operational. I'm fine, I told Tommy. But you might want to start keeping better track of your service time. That evening, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. Every piece of paper related to my employment at Precision Tool and Manufacturing, organized chronologically in file folders my ex-wife had bought me years ago. She used to make fun of my filing system, but it had served me well. Offer letter dated February 15, 1994, with a start date of March 1st. First time card showing hours worked starting March 1st. Employee handbook from 1994, updated versions from 1999, 2005, 2012, and 2019. The pension section was crystal clear. Full vesting occurred after 30 years of continuous service or at age 65, whichever came first. I was 61 with 29 years, 11 months and 24 days of service. 6 more days and I would have been fully vested. But according to their termination paperwork, I only had 29 years and 10 months, with an effective start date of April 1st instead of March 1st. I got out my calculator and started going through every time card, every pay stub, every vacation day and sick day I'd taken in 30 years. Everything was documented, everything added up to the same total. 29 years, 11 months and 24 days as of February 24, 2024. They'd miscalculated by exactly 36 days, enough to deny me full pension benefits worth approximately $180,000 over the course of my retirement. I thought about calling Austin Thornfield to point out the error, but something stopped me. This wasn't a mistake. The timing was too convenient, too precisely calculated. 5 days before my pension vested, after 30 years of perfect attendance and spotless performance reviews, I started thinking about other longtime employees who'd left Precision Tool recently. Eddie Kowalczyk from maintenance, no relation despite the similar name, let go last year at age 62 after 28 years. Jimmy Rodriguez from quality control, terminated 6 months ago after 27 years. Both of them just shy of full pension vesting. The next morning I called Eddie. We'd worked different shifts for most of our careers, but we'd known each other for decades through company events and union meetings. Vince, how's retirement treating you? I didn't retire, Eddie. They terminated me yesterday. 5 days before my pension vested. There was a long pause. 5 days? Jesus, Vince. That's exactly what happened to me. They said I had 27 years and 11 months of service, but I counted it as 28 years exactly. My stomach dropped. Did you challenge the calculation? I tried. They said their HR system was accurate and if I had a problem with it I should get a lawyer. Vince, I couldn't afford to fight a big company. Figured 11 months wasn't worth going broke over. But it wasn't 11 months. It was the difference between a partial pension and full benefits. The difference between a comfortable retirement and struggling to make ends meet. I called Jimmy Rodriguez next. Same story. Terminated just before full pension vesting, with service time calculated in a way that fell just short of the required threshold. I should have fought it, Jimmy said. But they made it sound like there was nothing I could do, like the decision was set in stone. 3 longtime employees, all terminated within a year of each other, all just before pension vesting. This wasn't coincidence. This was a systematic scheme. I spent the weekend going through old company newsletters and phone directories, trying to remember other employees who'd left under similar circumstances. The more I thought about it, the more names I came up with. But I needed help understanding my legal options. On Monday morning I called Patricia Novotny. She'd worked in HR at Precision Tool for 18 years before taking early retirement in 2022. Patricia had always been straight with the workers, always played by the book, and she'd helped me navigate company policies when I'd had questions about benefits and vacation time. Vince, I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. The whole thing smells rotten to me. Patricia, I need to ask you something confidential. Do you think this was legitimate? There was a pause. Vince, can you come to my house? This isn't something we should talk about over the phone. Patricia lived in a small house about 15 minutes from the Precision Tool plant. She kept her garden beautiful in retirement, and her kitchen still smelled like the coffee cake she used to bring to the break room during holiday shifts. Show me everything, she said. I spread my documentation across her dining room table. Service calculations, termination paperwork, pension plan documents, employment contracts going back 30 years. Patricia went through everything methodically, taking notes on a legal pad. Vince, this is criminal, she said finally. Federal law specifically prohibits terminating employees to prevent pension vesting. It's called ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. What they did to you is a federal crime. Are you sure? I'm positive. And if they did it to you, Eddie and Jimmy, they've done it to others. This isn't just wrongful termination, this is conspiracy to defraud employees of earned benefits. Patricia explained that she'd suspected something was wrong when Austin Thornfield started asking detailed questions about pension costs and vesting schedules shortly after he was hired. He'd requested reports about employees approaching retirement eligibility, asked about the financial impact of full pension payouts, and had private meetings with the new HR director about reducing legacy workforce costs. "I tried to warn people before I retired," Patricia said. "But nobody wanted to believe the company would screw over loyal employees like that. What should I do?" "File a complaint with the Department of Labor. They take ERISA violations very seriously, especially when there's a pattern of systematic abuse. But Vince, you need to understand, once you file that complaint, there's no backing down. They're going to fight you with everything they've got." Patricia helped me gather additional documentation. Employee handbooks showing the pension vesting requirements, organizational charts showing when Austin and the new HR director were hired, and contact information for other employees who might have been affected. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "I kept copies of some emails that worried me before I retired. I probably shouldn't have, but I had a feeling they might be important someday." She pulled out a folder from her home office. Inside were printouts of internal emails between Austin Thornfield and HR Director Rebecca Cassidy, discussing workforce optimization and legacy cost reduction strategies. One email from Austin to Rebecca, dated 4 months before my termination, included an attachment with the subject line "High Priority Vesting Prevention Targets." My name was on that list, along with Eddie Kowalczyk, Jimmy Rodriguez, and 8 other longtime employees. "They've been planning this for months," I said. "They've been planning this since Austin was hired," Patricia corrected. "This is exactly what he was brought in to do." That Tuesday, I drove to the Department of Labor office downtown. The building was one of those federal structures that made you feel both intimidated and protected at the same time: marble floors, high ceilings, American flags, and the weight of institutional authority. The investigator assigned to my case was a man named David Brennan, probably in his early 40s, with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that reminded me of the best supervisors I'd worked under. "Mr. Kowalczyk, tell me exactly what happened." I walked him through everything. 30 years of employment, perfect attendance record, termination 5 days before pension vesting, miscalculated service time, and the pattern I'd discovered with other employees. "Do you have documentation of your service time?" I opened my briefcase and spread out 30 years of time cards and pay stubs, organized by year in manila folders. David's eyebrows went up. "You kept all of this?" "My grandfather taught me to keep good records. Said you never know when you might need them." "Your grandfather was a smart man. What else do you have?" I showed him the emails Patricia had provided, the termination paperwork with the incorrect service calculation, and the pension plan documents outlining vesting requirements. David studied everything carefully, taking notes and asking specific questions about dates, policies, and company procedures. "Mr. Kowalczyk, based on what you've shown me, I believe Precision Tool and Manufacturing violated federal law. I'm going to open a formal investigation, but I need you to understand what that means. This could take months or even years. They're going to hire expensive lawyers and try to make your life difficult. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about 30 years of getting up before dawn, working overtime when they needed me, coming in on weekends when equipment broke down. I thought about training younger workers and sharing my knowledge, believing that loyalty would be repaid with fairness. "I'm prepared." "Good. I'm also going to need you to help us contact other affected employees. If this is as systematic as it appears, we'll need their testimony to build a strong case." The investigation moved quickly once it started. Within 3 weeks, David had interviewed Eddie Kowalczyk, Jimmy Rodriguez, and 6 other former employees who'd been terminated under similar circumstances. All of them had miscalculated service times that fell just short of pension vesting. More importantly, the Department of Labor had subpoenaed personnel files and internal communications from Precision Tool and Manufacturing. What they found was worse than any of us had imagined. Austin Thornfield and Rebecca Cassidy had been conducting a systematic campaign to identify and terminate employees approaching pension eligibility. They had spreadsheets calculating the cost savings of preventing vesting. They had email chains discussing the optimal timing for terminations to avoid legal challenges. They even had a PowerPoint presentation they'd given to the corporate board titled Legacy Workforce Cost Optimization Strategy. They documented everything, David told me during a follow-up meeting. It's like they thought they were untouchable. The emails were damning. Austin referring to longtime employees as legacy cost centers. Rebecca calculating that each prevented pension would save the company an average of $200,000 over 15 years. Board meeting minutes showing approval for the optimization strategy, with specific targets for the number of employees to be terminated. But the most shocking discovery was that this wasn't Austin's first rodeo. David's investigation revealed that he'd implemented similar schemes at two previous companies, a textile manufacturer in South Carolina and an auto parts supplier in Michigan. In both cases, longtime employees had been terminated just before pension vesting, with the same pattern of miscalculated service times. This is his specialty, David explained. Companies hire him specifically to reduce their pension obligations through fraudulent terminations. He's a professional pension thief. For weeks after I filed my complaint, David called with news that changed everything. Mr. Kowalczyk, we're filing criminal charges. Federal prosecutors have agreed to pursue wire fraud and conspiracy charges against Austin Thornfield and Rebecca Cassidy. This is going to be a federal criminal case. Criminal charges? When companies use electronic communications to plan the systematic denial of employee benefits, that's wire fraud. When multiple people conspire to do it, that's conspiracy. Both are felonies with significant prison time. I felt something I hadn't experienced since walking out of Precision Tool 4 weeks earlier. Hope. The federal investigation accelerated rapidly once criminal charges were filed. On a Thursday morning in April, I was drinking coffee and reading the paper when my phone rang. Turn on channel 11, David said. Right now. I found the remote and switched to the local news. The lead story showed federal agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the Precision Tool and Manufacturing building. Austin Thornfield was being led to a federal van in handcuffs, his usual confident demeanor replaced by shock and panic. Federal prosecutors have filed charges against Austin Thornfield, Regional Operations Manager at Precision Tool and Manufacturing, and HR Director Rebecca Cassidy, the reporter announced. They're accused of systematically defrauding longtime employees of pension benefits through fraudulent terminations. The camera showed Rebecca Cassidy being arrested at her suburban home, looking smaller and more vulnerable than she did in her corporate headshots. The alleged scheme affected at least 14 employees over a 2-year period, the reporter continued. Federal prosecutors say the defendants used company email systems to plan and coordinate the fraud, which cost affected employees millions of dollars in earned benefits. I turned off the television and called Patricia. Did you see the news? I saw it. Vince, I'm so proud of you for standing up to them. Most people would have just walked away and accepted it. I couldn't just walk away. Not after 30 years. The media attention brought more victims forward. By the end of the week, 21 current and former Precision Tool employees had contacted the Department of Labor with similar stories. The total financial impact exceeded $3.8 million in denied benefits. More damaging to Austin and Rebecca's defense was the discovery of additional communications with corporate executives and board members. The legacy workforce cost optimization strategy hadn't been a rogue operation. It had been approved and encouraged at the highest levels of the company. 3 weeks after the arrests, Precision Tool's corporate attorney called me directly. Mr. Kowalczyk, my client would like to discuss a settlement. Full restoration of your pension benefits, plus compensation for the hardship you've experienced. What kind of compensation? We're prepared to offer $125,000, plus full pension restoration and health benefits, in exchange for your agreement not to pursue additional legal action. I told him I'd think about it, then called David. Don't take it, he said immediately. Vince, this is going to be a class action lawsuit worth millions. The criminal case is just the beginning. Once all the affected employees join together, you're looking at substantial damages for every person they defrauded. He was right. By the end of June, 24 former and current Precision Tool employees had joined a federal class action lawsuit. The damages calculation exceeded $6 million in denied benefits, plus punitive damages for the systematic nature of the fraud. The criminal trial began in September. I testified on the third day, walking the jury through my 30 years at Precision Tool, the sudden termination, and the miscalculated service time that denied me full pension benefits. Austin Thornfield's defense attorney tried to characterize the terminations as legitimate cost-cutting measures, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutors presented hundreds of internal emails, spreadsheets calculating pension savings, and testimony from 14 affected employees. The most damaging evidence was Austin's own presentation to the board of directors, which included slides showing projected cost savings from preventing legacy vesting events. He'd literally presented pension fraud as a business optimization strategy. Rebecca Cassidy testified against Austin as part of a plea agreement. She explained how he'd recruited her to help implement the scheme, how they'd identified target employees, and how they'd coordinated the timing of terminations to maximize cost savings. He told me this was standard practice in corporate restructuring, she testified. He said every major company did it, and we'd be heroes for saving Precision Tool millions of dollars in pension costs. Austin's defense crumbled under cross-examination. When confronted with his own emails describing longtime employees as legacy cost centers and pension obligations as unnecessary financial drains, he couldn't explain away the systematic nature of the scheme. The jury deliberated for less than 8 hours. Guilty on all counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to defraud employees of earned benefits. Austin Thornfield was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Rebecca Cassidy received 2 years. Both were ordered to pay full restitution to affected employees and banned from working in management or human resources positions for 15 years. The civil settlement was announced 3 weeks after the criminal sentencing. Precision Tool and Manufacturing agreed to pay $8.4 million to affected employees, implement comprehensive reforms to prevent future benefit fraud, and submit to federal oversight of their employment practices for 7 years. My portion of the settlement was $485,000, plus full restoration of my pension benefits backdated to when they should have vested. More importantly, every affected employee received compensation and had their benefits properly calculated. 8 months after the settlement, I was working in my garage when the phone rang. It was Tommy Baranowski from the shop floor. "Vince, I wanted to thank you. If you hadn't stood up to those bastards, they would have done the same thing to me next year." The new management found my name on one of Austin's target lists. "How are things at the plant now?" "Different. Better. They brought in new leadership from corporate, and everybody's talking about treating employees with respect. Your case changed everything." I hung up and went back to restoring the 1967 Mustang I'd bought with part of the settlement money. It was a project I'd been wanting to tackle for years but never had the time or resources. Now I had both. 10 months later, I received a letter from the Department of Labor. David Brennan had been promoted to Regional Enforcement Director, and he'd written to thank me for my cooperation in the investigation. "Your willingness to stand up for yourself and your fellow employees led to one of the largest ERISA fraud prosecutions in our region's history," he wrote. "Because of your courage, dozens of employees received the benefits they earned, and systematic corporate abuse was exposed and punished." But the letter that meant the most came from my grandson Jake. He was a junior in college studying business administration, and he was writing a paper about corporate ethics and employee rights. "Grandpa, you taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to be taken advantage of," he wrote. "Your case is going to be studied in business schools as an example of why companies need to treat employees fairly. I'm proud to be your grandson." I kept that letter in my wallet, right next to the first paycheck stub from Precision Tool and Manufacturing. 2 years after my termination, I was volunteering at the local technical college when a young man approached me after a workshop I'd helped organize about workers' rights. "Excuse me, are you Vincent Kowalczyk? The guy who sued Precision Tool?" I nodded, expecting questions about the legal process or advice about documentation. "I work at Industrial Systems," he said. "We heard about your case and it made our management review their employment practices. They found some problems with how they were calculating service time for older workers. Because of what you did, they fixed those problems before anyone got hurt." That's when I understood that fighting back hadn't just been about my pension or my benefits. It had been about sending a message that workers have rights, that loyalty should be repaid with fairness, and that companies can't treat people like disposable assets without consequences. I never went back to work in a factory. At 61, with my pension properly restored and the settlement money wisely invested, I didn't need to. But I stayed busy helping other workers understand their rights, volunteering with organizations that provided free legal advice to employees facing age discrimination and benefit fraud. Austin Thornfield was released from federal prison after serving 4 years. He moved to another state and, according to his parole requirements, was prohibited from working in any management capacity. Rebecca Cassidy found work as a customer service representative at a small company that apparently didn't run thorough background checks. The new management at Precision Tool and Manufacturing implemented comprehensive training programs about employee rights and ERISA compliance. They hired an outside firm to audit their employment practices annually and created an anonymous reporting system for employees to report concerns about discrimination or benefit violations. But the most satisfying outcome was the policy change that resulted from our case. The Department of Labor used our prosecution as a model for a nationwide initiative to identify and prosecute companies engaged in systematic benefit fraud. The Precision Tool Protocol became the standard for investigating pension fraud cases across the country. 3 years after walking out of Precision Tool and Manufacturing with a cardboard box full of 30 years of my working life, I was sitting on my back deck watching my grandson work on his own car project. My pension payments arrived on schedule every month. My health insurance was secure. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that no other employee would suffer what I'd suffered, at least not at Precision Tool. My phone rang. It was Eddie Kowalczyk, calling with news about a former coworker who was facing a similar situation at his new job. "Vince, would you be willing to talk to him? He doesn't know what his options are, and he's scared of making waves." "Of course," I said. "Tell him to keep detailed records of everything and document every conversation. And tell him that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to let them get away with it. Because that's what I'd learned from 30 years of loyal service and 5 days of betrayal. Sometimes fighting back isn't about revenge. Sometimes it's about making sure the next person doesn't have to fight at all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept that what happened to you was acceptable. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone who comes after you. And sometimes, if you keep good records and refuse to go quietly, you can change an entire system that was designed to take advantage of people who believed that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded." My name is Vincent Kowalczyk. I worked for 30 years believing that if you did your job well and kept your head down, the company would take care of you when it was time to retire. When that didn't happen, I fought back through the legal system and won justice not just for myself, but for everyone they tried to cheat. It took 3 years from termination to final settlement, but every day of that fight was worth it. Because now, when other workers face similar situations, they know they have rights. They know the system can work if you're willing to use it. And they know that sometimes, one person with good records and determination can take on a whole corporation and win. That's not revenge. That's justice. And justice, it turns out, is much more satisfying than any revenge could ever be. The restored Mustang runs perfectly now, and every time I take it for a drive, I think about the importance of not accepting shortcuts or second-rate treatment. Whether you're rebuilding an engine or rebuilding your life after corporate betrayal, the principle is the same. Do the work right, document everything, and never accept less than what you've earned. Have you ever been taken advantage of at work because you trusted your employer to honor their commitments? How do you balance loyalty to your company with protecting your own interests? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of systematic justice and federal vindication, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Revenge Galore for more stories where preparation and persistence triumph over corporate greed. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest tales of justice served properly through the legal system.